Hi, I'm Pat Morris, your host for the PM Talk Show. Our telecast is made possible by these fine underwriters, and we thank them very much.
Locally owned and operated by Drs. Wheaton Boobridge, the Animal Care Center in Hammond and Pet Care Center in Ponchatoula have 6 vets on staff with nearly a century of combined experience. Celebrating our 30th birthday in May, the Animal Care Center has offered a full line of veterinary services, which includes medicine, surgery, grooming, boarding, and 7 days a week emergency services. Our mission is to provide the highest quality of veterinary care in a professional, compassionate manner. The Animal Care Center and Pet Care Center, a commitment to excellence with love and care for your pet.
Welcome again to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Morris, your host. We're glad that you're joining us yet again, and we have a very special guest with us today out here on beautiful Miller Lake, and she is a radio personality, a legend in her own right as a radio personality. Miss Mary Pirosko, how are you today?
I am so good. Thank you so much. That's very sweet of you to say that.
Good.
Whenever somebody calls you a legend, you think, uh-oh, it's time for the eulogy.
No,
You know?
no, definitely not the legend, but you've done so much great work via radio.
Oh, thank you.
I just want my audience to know that I have a very, very special guest today.
I still get people who come up to me and say, you know, well, I listened to you on the radio, and when I was a kid, you know, and I'll say, well, who made you listen? Was it your grandma or your school bus driver? Because it's usually one of those.
Right.
And they still remember. That's very sweet.
Right. Well, if you would you just give us a little history for those who may not know who you are? And I'm sure everybody does, but there may be some first-time young people who may be watching this. And you can give a little history about your career as a radio personality.
Okay, well, we moved here from Illinois in 1972. My husband was the commander of the Louisiana Air National Guard, and I was looking for something special of interest, and also my passion was to find services for my son who was mentally retarded, and there were no services available. So I started working for the old Murray Sun newspaper. It was a weekly newspaper that came out. And I worked there for about 18 months, and then I went to work for WFPR, WHMD, when it was out on Wardline Road. And that was probably in 74, 75 that I started working there. And by that time, we had been able to begin TARC, which was the Tangipahoa Association for Retarded Citizens at that time. Now they just go by the acronym. And so we were able to help and provide services for people with disabilities. And now that my son had services, I was able to work full time. So I worked at the radio station for a long time. It was an extraordinary experience. This was back in the heyday of radio, you know, and it was a real community station, and people called in all the time. A lot of people remember Miss DeZoo, who used to call in all the time. Miss Mary, she'd call in. And at one time, when we were still on Wardline Road, Robin Roberts came and worked with us. She came and started as one of my reporters, and that lasted maybe a couple of months. And she was extraordinary, of course, but then she went back to her real love, which was sports, and she became our sports editor. Then we moved downtown to where the radio station is now, on the corner of Cypress and Oak, and it's the North Shore Broadcast House. It's currently owned by the Dowdy family, and they've gone a long way toward maintaining that community involvement. I had a program called Ham in America, and people called in, and it was just wonderful. I felt like I had friends everywhere I went because people called all the time and shared their sorrows and their joys and their crises, and we kind of worked it out on the air.
Right.
It was great.
Right, and that's a beautiful thing, and just being able to communicate with the public and let them know, keeping them abreast of what's going on. That's very, very important, because a lot of people, they won't read the newspapers, or they don't read the newspaper, and just hearing it on the radio just keeps everybody abreast of what's going on. So let me thank you on behalf of all media for being the person that you were in radio and letting people know what was happening, good things, whatever was happening, things that you felt as a reporter they needed to know. Recently I had Miss Jean Voorhees on from the Democratic rally that you are a part of now. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what the
Sure.
plans are?
Jean and I go way back. When I was working to get services for people with mental retardation, she was working to start the Youth Service Bureau. And so we were at all these meetings at the same time, trying to get people aware of the need and get resources to provide that service. So it's wonderful to work with Jean again. She's retired from her job and I'm retired from mine, and now we work together. She's the president of the Tangi Democrats.
Okay.
And it is my great honor to work with her and with other people in the community. And it's kind of the same goal. Our goal is to get people informed about the issues so that they know what's going on, and even more importantly, that they feel they have a voice in what's going on. You know, Pat, there are so many people who feel, well, my vote doesn't matter. My voice doesn't matter. No one's going to listen to me. No one cares about me. It's all these rich people running everything. And there's some truth to that today. The rich people are running everything because they have the money to buy the media, and the media is so controlling of everyone's thoughts. But what the Tangi Democrats are trying to do is get more people involved and let people know that you do have a voice. It's very important. So we held this spring rally that you and Jean talked about, and we had about 100 people who came, which was wonderful because it was pouring down rain.
The weather was bad that day.
And it was lovely. We had people come who were running for office. We had representatives from Mary Landrieu's office who were there. And of course, State Representative John Bell Edwards, who is running for governor. And we had another, Junior Matthew, who is running again for assessor. He was there. And lots of people who came just to share their views and learn more about what's going on both locally and throughout the state. So it was an extraordinary effort, and a lot of people came. And Calvin Stafford cooked hot dogs for everybody in the rain with an umbrella, and everyone got some hot dogs and some. It was just like a great old American 4th of July celebration. Balloons everywhere and so much fun. And I think it was good to know that you're not alone out there. Sometimes today you feel like you're a voice crying in the wilderness, and no one is hearing that voice. But there are many people in the community who are concerned, and when we work together, we can make a difference.
And I noticed that because Miss Osabetz Williams, who's one of the Democratic Party members for the organization.
A great worker for our group.
She is, and she announced that she's running for the seat that's now held by Representative John Bell Edwards, District 72 State Representative. She gave a great speech. Certainly, I almost said Governor John Bell Edwards, but
hopefully you can say that soon.
But he made a fabulous speech about doing things with education, you know, in the legislature. And he had everyone's undivided attention because we all know we have problems and they have to be fixed. I was glad that he was able to attend the rally, and I was glad as many people who were there came out despite the bad weather. But it was a very good event, and just seeing people who are coming together now for one common cause, and that's a good thing, especially in today's society. That's a really good thing. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think a lot of us have been just crushed by what has happened to education under the Jindal administration. The many, many cuts to education across the state, and particularly to Southeastern Louisiana University. I mean, they're trying to turn that university into a community college is what's happening. And I think John Bell Edwards is going to be not just a voice for education, but a voice for justice, a voice for all of the people, because his family has such a history of public service. The family was just inducted into the Hall of Fame for their great service to the community. And John Bell grew up with that dedication to service. It's a part of him. He has a wonderful family. He knows with his own children how important education is. And I think he's a sincere and very good man who will be a great boon to this state if we can get him in that governor's chair.
Right. And certainly we're going to be trying, because God knows we need some changes.
We do need some changes. And again, you know, change. I just had a sermon at church on Sunday on change, and our minister talked about how change is fearful, but change is the only way to progress.
Right.
Without change, you cannot go forward. And we must change not just the way we view our state, we must change the way we view our involvement in our state. We must know that together we can make a difference, and it is our responsibility. You know, it's interesting today, people talk so much about their rights, but they don't really talk about their responsibilities to make sure that everyone enjoys those rights. And so I'm hoping that John Bell Edwards will spearhead that move and make people know more and more that this is a wonderful state. Louisiana is such an extraordinary state. I've lived in many, many places, and I've never met more generous, more wonderful people than live here in Louisiana, and they deserve the best.
Right. And you're absolutely correct, and you know that holds true for Tangipahoa Hill Parish as well. We're in the middle of everything we need, and there's absolutely no reason why we can't do a better job than we're doing. So I'm certain that the Tangi Democrats are going to be out and about, and we're going to get into that in part 2 and talk about the importance of getting out to vote and getting registered to vote.
Absolutely.
When you take responsibility for what you know what's going on, it not only makes things better for you as an individual, but it makes things better for your fellow man, certainly for the children that are coming along. And that's what we have to realize, that regardless of what some may say, we are our brother's keeper.
We are our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper and our neighbor's keeper. And we need to make sure that everyone has the same rights and privileges that we enjoy.
Right. Well, we're going for a break now, and when we come back, we'll continue to delve into with the Tangi Democrats with Miss Mary Pirosko. We're going for a break, and we'll be right back.
Shelters are the best places to find a new pet.
What a perfectly beautiful little lady.
That's where you'll discover healthy, loyal, and loving animals.
You little rascal.
Eager to become a part of your family. A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet.
Oh, ladies first.
Be that person. Adopt.
This is living. Hey, kid.
To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
Welcome back to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Marsh, your host, and we have with us Miss Mary Pirosko, who is a legend in her own right, and she's a former retired radio personality for WFPR.
And WHMG, right, and then later KSLU. I worked at KSLU for about 5 years too.
Okay, but before the break we were talking about the races that we will be working for in October, and talking about the importance to vote. And before we get into what the Tangi Democrats has planned for that period of time, can you tell the audience why you feel it's important that they register to vote, those that have not registered, that they not say that their vote does not count, but because it does. One vote can make a difference, and that was proven years ago. So give us some thoughts on how you feel about people getting registered to vote.
Well, I think it's not only your right to vote, it's a protected right, it's a gift. I mean, if you've lived in other countries, or if you watch the news and see these long lines of people trying to vote, trying to take control of their country, and in our country we already have these protected rights, not just to vote, but to speak out for what we believe, and to support the person we believe in, and to criticize our government. You know, I was taught as a little kid in Catholic school that it was my duty as a citizen of this country to criticize my government if I thought my government was wrong. And that is a duty. And it's also a duty to try to change what you think is wrong. And you think, well, my vote's not going to make any difference, but it will, because it's not just you, it's your next door neighbor, and it's the person down the street, and it's the guy you go to church with, and it's the lady you sit next to in the movies. If you all vote, and if you all put forward what you believe in, then that's how we, as Democrats in the true sense that this is a democracy, that's how we as people take control of our country and have it be the wonderful country we know it can be.
Exactly, exactly. So it's really important, and as you say, when you look at other countries, some people are dying just to go in because they want to go and cast a vote. And here in America, we have that right already, and many times we will not take advantage of it.
And that right's under attack right now. Right. In many states, yes, they are clamping down on your privilege, your right to vote, and making it more and more difficult for you, cutting voting hours, cutting early voting, requiring a state ID card when there are many people who do not have. They don't drive, they don't have a state ID card. And if you have registered to vote and you have your voter registration card, that should be all that you need. Right. This picture ID thing is just a rock put in your path that is stopping you from exercising your right to vote. Right. So don't let that happen to you. You have the right to vote. Get out there and vote.
Exactly. And I'd like to throw this in, that our national NAACP is fighting that very thing of the rights, trying to be stifled in some way to reduce the amount of people who go to the polls and votes. But you, as a citizen of the United States of America, your voice and your vote means a lot. And you can go out, and a lot of stuff that's happening, we can do it as a nation of people ourselves and make sure that we do have that God-given right, that constitutional right to do it.
You know, when people used to call the radio station and complain about government, local government, state government, national, the first thing I would ask is, did you vote?
Exactly.
And if they said yes, then I'd say, go ahead, you have the right to complain. And if they said no, I don't even take the time to vote, it doesn't mean anything, I'd say, well, then you can't complain.
Exactly, because you haven't done anything.
That's it.
And done anything. Now, the Democratic rally, the Tangi Democrats, you're going to have a lot of activities that you will be doing leading up to the election in October. What are some of those things that you will be doing?
Well, we're kind of taking the summer off. We're sort of accepting the fact that people are going out of town, visiting family, those kinds of things, and they have other interests in the summer. All the kids are out of school and families are doing things together. But Labor Day is coming up in September, and Labor Day is the traditional start of the campaigns, even though it seems like they're all the time now. Labor Day was the traditional start. That was the day my grandfather, put away his straw hat, and that was the day the campaigns began. So right after Labor Day, we're going to start meeting on a regular basis. Okay. We're doing our best to find a location that we can have as a headquarters. But there will be some place where we'll be meeting, and we'll make sure that Pat knows and the other media knows, so you'll know too where we're going to be meeting. We need volunteers. Right. We are the boots on the ground. When I came to Louisiana, I looked around because I was covering things like the Hammond Commission Council at that time, covering the police jury, the old police jury meetings, and I thought, this is truly grassroots government in action. And that's what it is here. We're so fortunate in Louisiana because we do have a lot of grassroots involvement. So that's what we are as the Tangi Democrats. We're those boots on the ground. Right. We're the ones who are going to be knocking on the doors saying, have you registered to vote? Would you like to register to vote? We have a piece of paper here we can give you. You can fill that out. We'll be happy to drop it off at the clerk of court's office or the voter registration office or wherever the proper place is. If you'd rather do it on your own, take the paper, fill it out at your leisure. If you are registered to vote, will you please vote in the coming election? The candidate of your choice. Sure, we want you to vote for our candidates, but just exercise your right to vote. Vote for the person you think is right. So we're going to try to do that. We're going to be, we bought Thank God for technology. We bought this wonderful program that lists all the voters in the parish and tells us when they last voted. So we're going to be trying to get those voters who haven't voted involved, and we want to make sure the people who do vote on a regular basis know about the elections that are coming up. There's so many important elections coming up. And we want to provide all the assistance we can. If you need a ride to the polls, we'll do our best to get that for you. If you need to know how the voting machine works, we can set that up. We did that at the rally. We had a voting machine where you can practice, because sometimes that can be confusing. And the clerk of court and the voting registrar are very, very active in trying to help people know how to work those machines. So we could arrange that kind of practice for people too. But we want very much, I guess, as Pat says, we want very much for you to know how important your vote is. Pick your candidate and vote for the person you feel best represents you. Best represents your beliefs, your desires, your values. That's the candidate you should vote for. I think that the Democratic candidates best do that for me. You may have your own opinion. In either event, please vote.
Right, and that's the message that we want to get out, that your vote matters, it does count. Please exercise that right to vote, and I don't think we can stress that enough. There are things that could be better, but they won't get better if you don't think about what it is that's going on and you don't exercise your right to vote for or against. When we look at what you're going to do as far as getting people registered to vote, once you set up Labor Day weekend, are you going to have a machine at your location? If people want to come there, they can register to vote, or if they just stop by to see what's going on?
We don't have the machine to register to vote, but we have the forms.
Okay.
So you can come out and fill out the forms, and we'll take them all over and make sure that they get filed for you. We'll be happy to do that. We're also going to have phone banks.
Okay.
So if you feel like you can't go out knocking on doors, maybe your feet hurt, or maybe you just don't get around that well, or you don't want to do that, we can have phone banks where you can make calls and ask other voters, make sure they know there's an election coming up, make sure they know who the candidates are, and make sure they know that they can get assistance to get to the polls. So we'll have those phone banks. I remember one day sitting next to someone watching the Strawberry Festival parade, and it happened to be on an election day. And I mentioned that to the person next to me, and they said, "Oh, I didn't even know there was an election today." And I thought, oh, that's sad. I mean, we have done everything we can. We put it in the newspaper, we put it on the radio, we put it on television. But you have to inform yourself. You have to know when those elections are going to be. We'll do all we can to help you, but you know, it's your responsibility as a voter to make sure you get out there and vote. So look in the paper and see when those elections are. Go on the Tangi Parish website. All those elections there. The Secretary of State has a list of all the candidates. That's pretty easy to get to, right, Pat?
It is.
And they will tell you, if you don't have a computer, there's free computers at the library. If you don't know if you're registered to vote or not, give us a call. We can look it up for you. We have this little app on our telephone that we can look up your name and tell you if you're registered to vote, tell you what precinct you're in and where you should go to vote. So we have that information's available, and we just want to do all we can to make sure that the people of our community know how important they are. And how important their vote is.
And just make a note and put it on your refrigerator door when you see what the election dates are.
Right next to the grandchildren's pictures.
Because you're always going to see them. That's what I do to make sure that I won't forget, because I take voting as a privilege. And I make sure at whatever election there is, I exercise my right to vote. And I try to encourage others to do the same thing. Well, Ms. Pirosko, we certainly thank you for coming today. Are there any closing comments that you have?
I just, you know, whenever the election comes around, I remember being a little girl and going with my grandfather to the firehouse. That's where we voted. And he would let me come into the voting booth with him.
Okay.
And that's when you marked it with a number 2 pencil. You marked your ballot. And he was so proud of that. And he'd fold that ballot up, and sometimes he'd let me put it in the box.
Oh.
And so I knew from the time I was a little girl how important it was to have a right to vote. My grandfather came from a country where those rights weren't given to everyone. They didn't have even the right to own property or to own a horse or to practice their religion. So these are rights we must protect. It's our responsibility to exercise that right.
Right.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you so much for coming, and certainly a lot of informative information was given, and we want to remind you and thank you to please continue to join our show. We will have Ms. Pirosko back as we get into the actual voting season, and she will be giving you updates on what's going on with Tangi Democrats. And if anybody else wants to come, my mic is always open for you. Just let me know. Well, we're coming to an end to our program. Thank you so much for joining us. Always remember that knowledge is powerful. It does matter. Thank you. Have a great week, and God bless.